Okay, so we are, excuse me, folks, we are, if you will, embarking on a phenomenally important time. I think it's really, really, really important, can you scooch back, that you look at coming into class as certain skills you need to learn. I love sports for so many different analogies, but if you were a baseball or a softball player and you knew that you were going to go up against a team that loved to bunt, then you would know that in practice you needed to learn how to defend the bunt. And if you did not learn how to defend the bunt, at some point it would cost you. It's not that learning how to defend the bunt is too hard, it's not that it's impossible, it's that you need to dedicate time to it. Now you just took a test, and on this test, some of you might get angry and say, well, I got a 75. I got a 68. Some of you who set very, very high goals for yourself might say, I'm very upset that I got a 92 or 94. They're all legitimate feelings. But it's also legitimate to say that I got 70% of the questions right already. So I know 70% of what I'm supposed to know. And when you play a game, be it baseball or softball or soccer or any other game, it doesn't really matter what the score is at the end of the first quarter. It matters what the score is when the game is done. And you do have the opportunity to improve on a grade that you just got. So I will give you that relearn packet in the next couple of days, and you'll go in and if you got a 70 on the first test, that means more or less you know 70% of the material already, and you can focus your efforts on learning the 30% that remains. And if you can learn more than 2/3 of that, that means you're going to get a grade into the 90s. So don't be angry with yourself. Learn to correct it, and as time goes on, raise your level of preparedness for tests incrementally, so that by the end of the year when we hit the Regents, we are fully prepared. Now, to me, taking a test is not too much about your intellect. It's really about your preparedness. Now, it's not a 100% true statement, because there are a handful of kids who are so smart that they really don't need to prepare and they're going to do very well. Those kids are extremely rare. There might be 2 or 3 in both classes this year. Everybody, virtually, needs to prepare. And as you go through schooling, if you're born a little extra smart, and everybody in this class is, when you're in first grade, you didn't need to do anything. It just was easy. The second grade was easy, and fourth grade and fifth grade, they were all very, very easy. And now you're starting to be challenged, and the level of intensity is going to increase every year, because now you're in Regents level classes, things that colleges look at when you apply. So the stakes are up, and this is definitely the most demanding level of material you've learned yet. It would be unfair to expect you to master that material the first time you go through the material. So if you didn't get a great grade, don't be upset with yourself. Just realize, okay, I did do a lot of things right, but I need to clean up a little bit of this other stuff. And that's what the relearn packet will be for. You clean it up, you get it going right. But the thing is, as the year goes on, we want to improve more and more in our ability to prepare, and then we'll be in good shape. Okay, so speaking of preparedness, all of these questions on the Do It are classic Regents exam type of questions that you are likely to see when you take your Regents exam in June. The first one, if 3A plus 4B is 2C, solve, and there's the key phrase, 4B. What does that mean?
Get B by itself.
That's right, get B by itself. Make it say B equals. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract the 3A. And that gives me 4B equals 2C minus 3A. Now you could have written negative 3A plus 2C. That would be just as good. Either way, it's the same exact thing. B is not by itself yet, so I'm going to divide by 4. And there's 2 ways to do that. One way is to just write this whole binomial, 2C minus 3A over 4. Or you could have done this. Divide by 4, 4, 4 and said B is C over 2 minus 3A over 4. Either one, they're both equally right. You should be able to recognize both, because in multiple choice, they might put either or on the test. There's not one that they would definitely put, okay? Preguntas? Questions? Okay. Next, find the product of 2x to the third and negative 5x. Product means 2? Multiply. Good. So 2x cubed times negative 5x is negative 10x to the fourth. Questions? All right. So now we scroll up a little bit, and again, these are very typical. This was taken right off a Regents exam. Write a coordinate of a point in a solution set with the two inequalities graphed below. Well, remember that what we have here is the solution set for this inequality is all this shading over here, all of this blue stuff, and the solution set for this one is all of this shading down here and blah, blah, blah. This is the only area where it's double shaded. The double shaded area is the solution set area. The point I always look at is 0, 0. Now, I do want to caution you about one point. And here's one of the things I mean about with preparedness. I had specifically said to you, way back when we covered inequalities and simultaneously graphing, that this is not the solution point. If I was graphing two lines, that would be the solution point. If I'm graphing two inequalities, it's not. Because this broken line here, any point on that broken line is not an answer. It's the same thing as when, if I was graphing on a number line, 2, and I said, this is a picture of x is less than 2. Is 2 an answer to this? No. 1.9999998 is. 2 is not. It's only the answer is less than 2. If I fill it in, then 2 is an answer to it. So this solid line, yes, every point on this is an answer. This broken line, it's like the open circle at 2. It means that it's strictly less than. It's not allowed to equal it. Okay? So therefore, you have to choose a point not where they intersect. If it was just two lines, if it was lines and just equals and no less than or greater than, yes, then where they intersect is the answer. Here you want to go with the double shaded region, and the point I always tend to pick is 0, 0 if that's in the double shaded region. If not, I'll pick another point. By the way, the reason I pick 0, 0 is it's so easy to check, if I have to check it. Okay? All right. And what are the slope and the y-intercept? Now, what's the problem with this guy?
Y isn't by itself.
That's right, y isn't by itself. So I have to divide everything by 3. Kind of like that question we just spoke of a minute ago. Y equals 2/3 x plus 4. Slope is 2/3. The y-intercept is 4. Okay. We are now going to radically shift gears. Huge change in the material that we go over. Everything up until now has been about solving and solutions. It's been about graphing. Why is this not erasing? It's been about graphing and a bunch of other things. We are now going to get into algebra. Now, we have done algebra. We did algebra with single equations. We did algebra with simultaneous equations. But we are now going to up the game into very specific algebra skills. So, the good news and the bad news is the same. If you've been getting 95s and 100s so far, that's great. Has very little to do with what we're about to cover. If you have been getting 50s and 60s, that's unfortunate. Let's get the grade up there. But it has very little to do with what we're about to do. So if you've been getting disappointing grades, well, this new material, you are exactly equal to someone who's been getting great grades, because there's no prior knowledge really necessary other than the distributive formula, which pretty much everybody knows. So we're going to talk about this topic called factoring. And you know it's pretty big when I use a myriad of exclamation points, and I write in capital letters, factoring is division, factoring is division, factoring is division. Another name for it is to anti-distribute. Now, anti always means opposite, okay? I hate heavy metal music. I'm not a fan of it at all. Do any of you listen to heavy metal at all?
I used to.
One, two people? Okay. Heavy metal music often wraps itself in imagery of the Antichrist, right? You ever hear of that 666? All right. So Christ is, now whether or not you believe he's God, we'll table that because that discussion doesn't really belong in a classroom. But I think we could all agree that whether you think he's God or not, he was a nice guy, right? I think, can we all agree with that, right? Like he didn't go around hurting people and harming people. So if the Christ was the nice guy, the Antichrist is the evil, bad, horrible, awful guy. And then if you go further and believe Christ is God, then yes, he would be the devil type. Okay. So anti means opposite. It means to go backwards. So to anti-distribute means to do the opposite of distribute. It means to go backwards. So when I see 5n minus 20, what we're doing is we're playing the game Jeopardy. Now, what is so unique about the game Jeopardy? It's the only game that does this. That's right. The answer is the question. They give you the answer. Like, for instance, if they say Abraham Lincoln, or let's turn it around. The 16th president of the United States would be what the little Jeopardy thing question would say. But then you could not say Abraham Lincoln. What are you supposed to say? Who is, or what is, who is Abraham Lincoln? You're supposed to get back to the question, and that's what we do with factoring here. So if I was to distribute, there would be something in common. So the answer to this would be 5 times n minus 4. Now, can you see that if you were to distribute the 5 back, you would get the 5n minus 20?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what factoring is. Factoring looks for what they share in common, the greatest common factor, GCF. In this case, they share a 5 in common. You pull out that 5, there it is, and then you divide, because factoring is division. What's 5n divided by 5? N. What's negative 20 divided by 5? Negative 4. Now, here's the thing. With factoring, just do it. Just do it. It's okay. Because when you check back, how many people agree that distributing is really easy? Can we all agree that to distribute is very simple? So whatever your guess is, I really don't care. Because when you distribute back, you just check your answer and see if it works. What's 5 times n? 5n. What's 5 times negative 4? Negative 20. Now, in the beginning, you will make some mistakes. But after you do this for a little while, you will not make any more mistakes. Try the next one. Okay, now, does anybody see the greatest common factor? What is it? 12. Now, you may have chosen a smaller number, and you would have factored, you just would not have factored completely. You would have done the factoring equivalent. If I said to you, reduce 4/8, anybody ever put an answer like 2/4? But what should the answer be to reduce 4/8? Should be a half, right? Okay. So likewise, let's check back again. 12 times g is 12g, 12 times 2 is 24. If you wrote, for example, 4 times 3g plus 6, that is also a factored form of this. However, you didn't choose the greatest common factor. You have to choose the greatest common factor. Try the next one. Okay, so what do they share in common? They share a 4. And dividing it out now, 12x divided by 4 is 3x. And 28 divided by 4 is 7. Always, always, always check yourself back. 4 times 3x is 12x. 4 times 7 is 28. Sweet. Try the next two. Okay, so we take a look at the first one here, and what do they all share in common? 5. So I'm going to do 5 times, and when I pull out, factor out, divide out the 5, what am I left with? A 3b plus 2c. Now let's just distribute back. 5a minus 15b plus 10c. Good. And then you look at this one, and all of a sudden, there's no number that they share in common. It's not only the case that they can share a number or a coefficient in common, they could also share a variable in common. What do they share in common? An a. Now, if I factor out the a, I'm left with a plus 3. What's a times a? A squared. What's a times 3? 3a. Good. Try the next one. Okay, what do they share in common here? A. And then you left with? Good. Distributing back, a times a is a squared, a times negative 7 is negative 7a. Let's go to number 7 and 8. Give it a try. Actually, you know what? I take it back. Let's try 7, and then we'll give you 8 in a minute. A little bit of a hint here. It's possible to have both a number and a letter in common. Okay, who thinks they know what the greatest common factor is? Sammy? 5a, good. And then if I factor out the 5a from 5a squared, what am I left with? A plus 3. Whenever it comes to a variable and the common factor, you're always going to choose the smallest amount of the variable. If, for argument's sake, this said 5a cubed plus 10a squared, I would pull out the a squared part for the variable. Multiplying back, 5a times a is 5a squared, 5a times 3 is 15. What do you think you share in common here? 5 and x. And that leaves me with 2x minus 5. All right, I want to jump down to number 11. Hold it. What's the amount of n's they share in common? N what? N squared. And then a 4 out in front. Okay? All right, hasta la vista. Bye, adios, toodaloo, ta-ta. There, Chick. Smile a lot. Ciao. Adios, amigos y amigas. Cheerio.